Hello. All right. Yeah. Just so you know, guys, Scott had brought up a good point. Colonel Tom Parker, the original manager of Elvis was Scotty Moore. Scotty Moore was the original manager of Elvis in the early days, of course. And actually, if Scotty Moore would have been greedy, which he wasn't, he would have made a lot of money over the lifetime of Elvis's career because at the time he had already signed a deal that he would have got a small percentage of Elvis's earnings, and it had already been signed. And he had went to Vernon and he went to Gladys and signed it with them at their house with Elvis, the original contract to be his manager. I agree with you. I don't think Elvis ever needed a manager, but at the time, he was young and starting out in the business, and he needed some guidance. That's all. And then Bob Neal came to Scotty Moore and said that he could take him further, of course, and branch him out a little bit into bigger venues. So Bob Neal took over the management of Elvis Presley, and Bob Neal was more of like a regional guy. So Elvis went out into the more of the regional areas, different areas around the states. But then came Colonel Tom Parker, and Colonel Tom Parker basically came in as an advisor originally. He was there to advise Bob Neal and to help Bob Neal to get Elvis into the bigger venues more nationally, because he controlled more of the national scene. So that's why Bob Neal kind of stepped aside at one point later on, after Colonel Tom Parker kind of forced him out in a way, and got him into the national scene. At that point, when Colonel Tom Parker got him national and got him seen in states around the whole United States, not just locally in Memphis and not just regionally in the states surrounding Memphis and Tennessee, he then, got him national, and then he got him the deal with the movies. And then, of course, when you get a movie, everybody sees you, the whole world. Do you think he would have eventually, even without a manager? Well, I would say the truth of the matter is, originally, any act, no matter how big a person they are or big an act they are, like Elvis, I always say, was the lightning in the bottle. Elvis was the big bang of music. He's what came together, and he was just this unstoppable force, so to speak. Do I think Elvis would have made it national eventually, even without a manager? Early on, he needed a manager. Early on. Because you got to understand, he was an 19-year-old kid coming out. 1953, he was just an 18-year-old kid. And when he made it, about a year later, and made it, 19-year-old kid, he had no clue what he was doing. He needed some guidance. Scotty Moore, was around at the time with Sam Phillips, and he had been around the business enough. He kind of had a little bit more knowledge of what goes into it to become an act, to do shows, to make money. So it was important that someone close to Elvis, Bill Black, Scotty Moore, Elvis, they were a team. I believe they were called the Blue Moon Boys. But they were an act that he needed someone close to him that he trusted to help him, to guide him at that point. And then after that, Scotty Moore realized that even though he knew a lot about the local scene, the Sun Records scene, the Memphis scene, some of the local shows and the local gigs, and at that time Elvis was playing more high school stuff, as far as high school, places where high school kids went. He needed to do bigger shows. So that's where Bob Neal came in. And Bob Neal kind of asked Scotty if it would be okay if he would manage Elvis Presley, because he could take him further. And this is where I say that Scotty Moore was really, really a great guy. Because Scotty Moore stepped aside and allowed, Bob Neal to take over. And really, honestly, Scotty lost probably over the term of the contract, probably lost millions of dollars that he would have had coming to him, because he could have been greedy and he could have stuck to that contract, and Elvis had signed it, and it would have paid Elvis, it would have paid Scotty at least $1 million over the contract, if not more, over time. So it was really cool what Scotty did. And Bob Neal took over, and then down the line, that's when Tom Parker kind of forced out Bob Neal. But it took Elvis national, and then Elvis got in the movies, and that allowed Elvis to be seen overseas and everywhere else. So Parker wasn't a bad guy up until about 1957. And after that, Elvis wouldn't have needed anybody to manage him. Because actually, truth be known, small quick story, when Elvis Presley went into RCA Music, you got to understand now, Scotty Moore was his original manager, then Bob Neal, then Colonel Tom Parker comes on the scene. Colonel Tom Parker gets him in the movies, gets him seen nationally, gets him playing on a major label, RCA. Now, Elvis was still, fairly young at this time, but he was more astute and more up to date with what was going on in music and what needed to be done to become a star and to keep going forward, so to speak. And he walks into RCA, and RCA is sitting there with all their big wigs and all their suits, and they're staring at Elvis, and they're basically saying, okay, Elvis, this is where we need you to be, this is what we need you to do, this is how we're going to do things, and this is going to be who's going to be your backup group, all these people here, all these musicians, this is going to be who you play with, do your songs. And Elvis said, where's my guys? Where's my guys? And they said, no, you don't understand, this is RCA, we do our things our way, and this is the people we have, and this is what we're going to do. This is why I say that at this moment, this very moment that I'm speaking of, that Elvis no longer really needed Colonel Tom Parker. Colonel Tom Parker had already done what needed to be done to get Elvis at this point, and from this point forward, Elvis had already become his own man. He really could have got rid of Colonel Tom Parker at that point and been fine. At this moment, he looked at the suits, and he said, now, I don't think you guys understand. I'm Elvis Presley, and we do it my way. And they said, well, this is RCA, and we do it our way. And he said, well, if my boys don't play on my records, I don't record. So it's your choice. Either they play or I don't play. They're my band, they're my group, they're my guys. They're either on the records with me or I don't sing. I won't record. And the suits got together and they did their little huddle and whatever, trying to make themselves feel like they have a reason for being there. When it was all said and done, they looked at Elvis and they said, your boys can play. At that very moment, Elvis Presley had the backbone, he had the knowledge, and he knew exactly what he needed to do and how he needed to do it to be his own manager at that point. Now, I give Parker credit for getting Elvis national. I give him credit for putting him in the movies. But let's not forget, the movies were also almost the undoing of Elvis. Getting him national and getting a few movies was great. Signing him to a 33-movie deal was not great. Because once Colonel Tom Parker signed him to a 33-movie deal, he was owned to do 33 movies. Now, luckily for Elvis, they let him out of his contract with 2 documentary movies at the end of it. Because if Elvis wouldn't have been able to get back to live performing, he would have been lost. Because, that 10 years he lost in the movies really could have been the undoing of Elvis Presley, because at that point, too many groups were coming in on the scene. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and all the different groups were coming out. Heavy metal was starting to hit. And Elvis was getting pushed back. People didn't even really know. They knew Elvis was on the movies. He was on the big screen, but he was just that guy singing to the girls on the beach. A whole generation was coming about who didn't know who Elvis Presley was, and he needed to get back to the live audience. He needed to get back to the people, and that's what Elvis was all about, was the people and the audience. Elvis wouldn't have needed a manager after 57 when he walked into RCA Records and told them guys what it was about. But unfortunately, in this business, the entertainment business, there's very few, if any, stars out there that don't have an agent, that don't have a manager, that don't have someone calling the shots. Because as an entertainer, technically speaking, you need to understand that you need to concentrate on your music, or you need to concentrate on your acting, or whatever it is you are. You need to concentrate on that. You don't have time to manage your affairs You just have to concentrate on your art. And that's why when you're an artist, whether it be an actor or whether it be a music singer, in Elvis's case, both, he didn't have time to worry about that stuff. But in late 70s, 76, I say late 70s, obviously it can't go past 77 because we all know what happened in August 16th, 1977. But in 76, 77, around that ballpark, but closer to 76, end of 76, Elvis wanted to move away from Colonel Tom Parker. And Vernon definitely wanted to get away from Colonel Tom Parker because at that point they, seen the writing on the wall. Colonel Tom Parker was using Elvis to pay his gambling debts instead of using Elvis to, do what was in the best interest of Elvis, which was, make sure he was healthy, make sure he was doing a good show, make sure he wasn't being overworked. And Colonel Tom Parker was working Elvis to the bone, and it was killing him. Elvis needed to rest. He needed to do a little less shows. He was getting older. He wasn't 22 anymore. He was, almost 42 at this point. Elvis had talked to Vernon and his people, and he had come to the conclusion that he wanted to get rid of Colonel Tom Parker. And this is, like I was saying in the room, Colonel Tom Parker knew that the writing was on the wall. He wasn't stupid. He knew he could only suck Elvis dry so long. When Elvis is getting 50% and Colonel Tom Parker is getting 50%, and Elvis is paying for all the people, all the show production, and all of the different expenses, and all Colonel Tom Parker's paying for is promotions. So basically, at this point, Colonel Tom Parker is making more money than Elvis Presley. And not only that, but at the end of his career, Elvis was getting 15% of the royalties from his music, and Colonel Tom Parker was getting 85%. So in actuality, Colonel Tom Parker was making more money than Elvis Presley was. And so, with that said, it was time for him to go. So Vernon, God love him, Vernon was a great guy. And a lot of people give him a bad rap, and they say, well, he should have done this or he should have done that. Vernon was a simple guy. He came from a simple background. He wasn't, didn't go to college. He wasn't highly educated, but he was a good guy, and he had Elvis's best interest at heart, and he really did care a lot about Elvis. Obviously, it was his son. And so he went to Colonel Tom Parker, and he was going to fire him because Elvis trusted Vernon with his affairs. He really did. He was almost like, Vernon would have been what would be considered today as Elvis's agent. He would have been the guy who would have stood up for Elvis in a meeting and said, listen, this is my boy, this is what we're going to do. He was the agent, kind of speaking. He would have been what would be an agent today. And he said, Colonel, we no longer need your services. We're going to let you go. Whatever you need to do, this, and this, we're going to have to part our ways. Colonel Tom Parker, being the guy he was, the ex-carny, the thief that he was, went into his office. He said, I'll be right back. He drew up a bogus bill. Elvis somehow owed him $3 million or some crazy sum of money. Vernon looked at it, and being the fact that he wasn't a lawyer, didn't know if it was true or not true, it looked legit. He looked it over, and then he backed down. And he said, well, I guess we'll retain you as the manager of Elvis Presley from this point. And he went forward. And that's how it went down. The sad part is, and a lot of you that have been in my room, this is repetitious. The sad part is Elvis Presley could have got rid of Colonel Tom Parker in 1957, 1956, 59, 72, 77, any of those years, all the way up to the end of his career. At any time, he could have got rid of Colonel Tom Parker because there wasn't a contract that he signed that was worth its weight in paper. Because Colonel Tom Parker wasn't a citizen of the United States, and nothing he signed was a legal binding contract. See, the sad part is, the crazy part is, Colonel Tom Parker wasn't a legal citizen of the country he came from And he wasn't a legal citizen of the United States of America because he wasn't a citizen. He was an illegal alien. And see, when he went in the military, in the United States military, he swore to the United States military to serve and protect the military, you know, in front of everybody. And at that point, he got rid of his rights to his country, and he wasn't a citizen of the United States, so he really wasn't a citizen of the United States either. He was actually a man without a country. But the bottom line is, not anything he signed or anything he made Elvis sign or anything at all was a legal binding contract. And if you look over the lifetime of the contract with Elvis, he made millions and millions and millions of dollars, and every bit of that money did not need to be paid to him because it wasn't legal. And when it was all said and done, the only thing that Colonel Tom Parker did for Elvis from 1957 on, in my opinion, was use him, sadly, because he had a lot of gambling debts in Vegas. And there's a reason why. Even though I love the Elvis in Vegas from 1969 on, I love the Elvis in Vegas years. I really do. A lot of people don't, because they think of Elvis in 1956 and 57 and 58, the vibrant, the young Elvis, the rock and roller, the rebel. They think of that. And let's face it, that was a strong time in Elvis's career. But the Vegas Elvis really did bring him into a whole new generation of fans. Most of the people that come in this room, that's the Elvis that they actually know, is the Vegas Elvis. Not so much the young Elvis, they know the Vegas Elvis. So, ironically, something that was being very selfish on Colonel Tom Parker's part, which was to put Elvis in Vegas, because Colonel Tom Parker was a huge gambler and had gambling debts out the ass, he needed to pay off his gambling debts. So to do so, he used Elvis as a pawn to help pay off his gambling debts. You know, you can have my boy play his music here, and that'll help pay off my gambling debts, and he'd do me favors and all this stuff. He was doing favors and getting favors done for him, because Elvis was in Vegas, and it was helping Vegas, and by helping Vegas, it was helping Colonel Tom Parker. Give and take. That's what he was all about. Colonel Tom Parker was always looking for an angle, looking for a way to, screw the system, so to speak, to make a dollar. I mean, he started out as a carny, guys. He was always looking for an angle to make a dollar, to screw the system so that he could, find a way to take it from him to give it to him. That was always the way he was. Now, that's great and all, and it helped Elvis early on in his career, but it certainly hurt him in the end, because Colonel Tom Parker used him to the point where, Elvis could have been making a lot more money and would have had a lot more to give. But Elvis was a simple guy. He came from Mississippi, as you all know. He was broke. He was poor. He didn't have a whole lot. And, so when he had millions of dollars, Elvis, that was plenty. He didn't need, even though he'd buy Cadillacs for people and houses for people and pay off loans for people and do all this stuff for them and use all his money to the point where he was almost bankrupt at the time of his death. He was damn near bankrupt. He'd almost used all his money. And there was times when Vernon would tell Elvis, you got to make another movie. You got to make another movie, because you're getting, each movie he did, he got paid $1 million, because he was literally flat broke. There were times where he had run out of money. So he would make a movie, and that would pay the bills. He was to the point where what he had coming in was gone. He had to go make a movie or do some shows or whatever he had to do. But he was flat broke. So he would give away all his money. He'd use his money to pay for Graceland. He'd use his money to pay for all the different fees and expenses and all that. And for him, I mean, when he'd walk around and he's able to buy this, he's able to do that, he's thinking, I got plenty of money. Elvis wasn't greedy. He was generous to the umpth degree. So, I mean, if he had $1 in his pocket and he could buy whatever he wanted, he was like, I'm rich, I can do what I want. I'm not worried about money. So he didn't concern himself with what Parker was stealing from him. because he still had this boatload of money as far as he was concerned over here. So he really didn't concern himself with what Parker was stealing from him. You know, I wish he had. We all do, but it doesn't matter at this point. The bottom line is, you know, Parker was cut loose as soon as Elvis passed away. Right after that, the courts came in and cut him loose. And just to show what Elvis wasn't about, which was greed, he wasn't a greedy person at all. Elvis had watched a lot of the stars of the day lose all their money and lose their estates and lose all their cars and all their belongings from the IRS, because the IRS would come in, audit them, and, you know, they're in trouble because they were dodging money. You know, they were dodging taxes and stuff and got in trouble for tax evasion. So what Elvis did is he contacted the IRS and said, I don't want to have this happen. I don't know how to do taxes, and I don't really want to get an attorney to do it to find a way to get around it. Well, it's a smart move. You're right. It is a smart move to do this, but it's also cost you millions of dollars over a lot of, you know, it cost them millions of dollars to do this, but it's smart, because if you got the IRS doing your taxes, they can't exactly audit you. So it is a smart move in that regard, but believe me, they're not going to find loopholes for you either. But this just shows you what he wasn't. He wasn't greedy. He called the IRS up and he said, listen, I want you to do my taxes personally. Send one of your agents over to do my taxes. I'll open up my books and you do it. The IRS came over personally and did Elvis's taxes. That way, at least he knew he could never be audited and lose everything. Because when it was all said and done, all he cared about, all Elvis ever cared about, was taking care of Vernon, taking care of Gladys when she was alive, taking care of Lisa, and taking care of the boys, and the band, and everybody else, and the fans. That's all he cared about. So, as long as he could live his life, be happy, and everybody else was taken care of, Elvis was happy. Alright, so with that said, guys, I want you to know that we got a couple special days coming up here in the next couple days. Today, as we speak, it is August 12th, turning to August 13th. It just turned to August 13th in my talk here. Now, August 14th is a special day in Elvis's life, and I don't want anybody to forget this. You know, we all remember August 16th, 1977 is a sad day, but it's also a day that we remember Elvis's life. It's a day that we remember what he was all about. It's not a day that we remember he passed. It's a day that we remember his life and we celebrate it. That's what we need to do. When they go to Graceland and they have the candlelight visual, and when they have they do all the shows and they have all the people there and all the ex-Elvis people, and all the people go up to Graceland. They're not going up there, technically they're not going up there to mourn his death. They're going up to celebrate his life. But I want you to be clear that August 14th is also a very, very, very important day in Elvis's life. In 1958, August 14th, 1958, Elvis lost his mom. And without his mother, or as he would call her, his mama, he would not be here. And we all know we love our mamas for that reason. Because without them, we would not be here. You know, Vernon's important, but Gladys was his heart and soul, and he lost her. And August 14th is that day. So on August 14th, which is not tomorrow, or as we speak right now, August 13th is right now. It's 12:25 a.m. right now as I'm speaking, Eastern Standard Time. And it's technically August 13th. August 14th, we are going to celebrate the life of Gladys as well. And then August 16th, we're going to celebrate the life of Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, the greatest entertainer that ever lived, the one and the only. And don't forget it. August 16th, I want everybody to be in the room. That's Saturday, as well as the 14th. But Saturday is a special day because it's going to be Elvis-only music. Elvis-only music. My room normally allows all music because Elvis appreciated all music. The only music we don't play in the room is rap and heavy metal. But Elvis did love all music. So in my room, we always allow all music including Elvis, of course, because Elvis had a lot of different music he loved and a lot of different singers he loved, and he appreciated all different genres of music. However, on August 16th, on Saturday, this room, for the first time, will be Elvis only. You can play Elvis music, you can sing Elvis music, you can play Elvis stories, you know, you can do whatever. As long as it pertains to Elvis, it's Elvis only, Saturday night, and we're going to celebrate the life of Elvis Presley. So thank you, everybody, for being here. God bless you all for listening. And with that, we're going to close out the room. But as I said, let's make sure that we celebrate Gladys's life on August 14th, and let's celebrate on Saturday, let's celebrate Elvis only, and let's celebrate his life on the 16th. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. And with that, we're going to close out the room. We will be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. Good night, everybody.